Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the second live Facebook here. And I'm Kerry Jeffrey, of course, clinical hypnotherapist, counselor, and coach. And I help people just like you who overcome the anxiety, the trauma, and the overwhelm of living life with chronic illness and all of the different emotional challenges that it brings. So if you're watching, please say hi in the comments so that I know that you're watching and you're here. And today we are still on the theme of communication, which is a really important one. And I think this one is the one that gives people the most problems, especially I know the people that I've talked to, and that is how to get your partner's support with chronic illness. So I'm going to go over some of the main points that get in the way of that, and then I'm going to give you guys a couple of strategies that are going to help with that. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to just post a comment. So just type something in and let me know, and I'll be happy to answer the question. So when it comes to getting chronic illness and when it comes to your relationship with your partner, the first thing you need to really understand is that chronic illness has a way of showing up any cracks, any existing cracks in your relationship. So the things that were there, the things that cause little issues, irritations, arguments, things like that, that were already there. And when you get chronic illness, of course, you lose your ability to compensate for the issues in your relationship. So chronic illness has a way, I guess, of unveiling or unmasking the issues that were there for the simple fact that you no longer have the energy to deal with it, right? You don't have the energy, you don't have the mental bandwidth to deal with it. And you can't keep covering it up, right? So you can't keep compensating, you can't keep doing things that you were able to do before because you simply don't have the energy and you don't have the means to do it. And that can be a bit of a shock, right? Because not only are you now chronically ill, but now you're seeing, it's as if you're seeing your relationship very clearly for the first time and realizing that, hey, there's some really major issues here. And I don't know if I've got the strength to deal with them, right? I don't know if I can deal with this on top of already having chronic illness. So that's something to keep in mind when this comes up. And sometimes the fact of just having chronic illness and seeing the cracks in the relationship, you can sort of exaggerate them. So in your state of shock and all of the trauma and all of the grief and everything we go through with chronic illness, it can make it seem like it's worse than it can be, because I think when these things happen, it's like we get a paintbrush with only a tin of black paint. So we tend to paint everything darker than it really is. So it is hard to see things clearly and it's hard to see things realistically, and that can make things worse as well. So I just want to say you'll have to bear with me a bit today. I am in the midst of a flare from my fractured wrist that I did a couple of days ago. So I'm still in a bit of pain from that, and the painkillers combined with the flare are making me a little bit dopey, and my speech is a little bit fuzzy. So I'm doing the best that I can, and I'm sure it will be clear enough for you. So that's the biggest thing. Really seeing things clearly, or really feeling the frustration and feeling like, oh my God, I can't deal with our relationship issues on top of what I'm going through. That can be the first thing you really need to look at. So the next thing you need to be aware of, because everything starts with us, right? What we want to do, everything starts with us in here, with our attitudes, with our beliefs, with our mindset, all of these different things that are going on, and you've really got to fix that first before you can do anything. And one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make in their relationships is that you want to protect your partner and your children from the illness, which is quite a noble thing to want to do, but ultimately it's not going to serve you or anybody else. Because remember, what we've got going against us is that for most of us, the illness that we have is invisible. So basically, we're expecting people to take our word for the fact that we do have chronic illness and the impact that it has on us and the boundaries that we need to set. So if you want to vary out of love or out of guilt or not wanting to be a burden, if you decide that you want to spare your partner and your children and you say something to yourself like, I don't want this to affect them. I still want them to have a normal life. I don't want to be a burden to them. Well, you are just going to actively participate in your own burnout and breakdown, basically, right? Because you're not accepting the fact that you have chronic illness. That is a big issue, right? You really need to accept the fact that you have chronic illness. And when you're in a relationship, whatever happens to one of you happens to both of you because there is an impact on your partner. And the one way that you are going to successfully get through this in the best possible way is if you are working actively together as with your partner and with your children as well, because there will be changes that you're going to have to make. And it's going to make it a lot harder on you if you are the only one participating in those changes. The isolation that you already feel is going to feel 100 times worse. And it's going to be so much harder. And because it feels so much harder and you feel more isolated, then you're much less likely to make any changes stick. So it's really like putting yourself behind the 8 ball. So if you are feeling that you need to protect your family or protect your partner, or you're saying things like, I want them to have a normal life, one, that's not realistic because you're no longer the way that you were before. And they're going to know that. They're going to see that every single day and they're going to wonder why, right? But if you openly embrace the chronic illness and you talk about it in a factual way and you are able to accept it and just say, well, this thing has happened. And now that this thing has happened, as a family, right, or as a couple, then we need to adapt. And you can still, enable your partner to do some of the things that they enjoy. It's if they want to go out and spend time with their friends as they did before. There's no reason why those things can't happen. It's about the two of you together working out what's realistic and what's doable and what needs to happen. And the other thing with this is that most people with chronic illness are women predominantly. And in the majority of cases, so I have worked with gay couples, the majority of times the partner is male, right? And what men tend to want to do is men tend to want to fix the problem, fix you. So they come up with a whole lot of solutions. Now, yes, women do this too, of course, but men tend to do it to a greater extent. And of course, I'm generalizing, right? Every couple is different. Every couple is unique in their makeup, in their dynamics, in their communication style. So I'm trying to cover the whole base of the whole thing. So the only way I can really do that is generally. So in general, men will try to fix you, which is incredibly frustrating because they'll come up with things like, have you tried this? Or why don't you do that? Or, you should just eat this way, or you should just do that, or you should just get to bed earlier. All of this, they'll try and fix it for you. And the frustration for them is that they can't, right? And when they see you suffering, they find that really difficult. And so they tend to withdraw. And they tend to go into themselves because you're suffering. They can't fix it for you. They feel helpless. They don't have anybody to talk to about it. In general, when one person gets chronic illness or something, other thing traumatic, because chronic illness is traumatic, you tend to go into your shell and you tend to not want to talk about it. And because your partner can't help you, or they don't know what to do, or they don't know what to say, they withdraw as well. So rather than connecting, you are disconnected, right? You are starting to grow apart. You both start tiptoeing around each other. You don't want to add to each other's burdens. And so you stop talking, you stop communicating because you don't want to burden each other. And this is really depriving you from getting comfort and support from each other at the time when you need it the most. So, communication with each other is absolutely key. It just has to happen, or you're going to find the gap between the two of you just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And often it's not for any lack of caring, it's just over consideration or feeling frustrated or feeling helpless that you can't do anything to help the person that you love. And it also is a big change. It's a big change for you. It's a big change for your partner. It's a big change for everybody. And everybody resents chronic illness. I know I do. Many times I resent it. It's a fact of life. Like, and when you get it, your main thought is, I don't want this. I don't want to live with this. I don't want to have this. And of course, your partner is thinking that as well because their life has changed. So, all the things you used to be able to do, maybe the things that you built a relationship on, the things you did as a couple, the goals you had for yourself as a couple, as a family, all the things that you were going to do, it's a loss to your partner as well. The loss is just not yours, it's a mutual loss because the future that you both thought you had is now up in the air, and there's a whole lot of uncertainty as to what's going to be possible. So it's really important to start talking. It's really important to have the right tools and skills to be able to communicate instead of having conflict. Because basically, the communication model that we are taught is actually not communication, it's a conflict based model. It's blame and it's shame. It's who can either, yell the loudest and win the argument, or who can give the silent treatment for the longest and win the argument. And most couples tend to have the same 3 to 5 arguments all of the time that get constantly recycled and never really ever get resolved, which is why I spend quite a bit of time teaching my clients. And I do work with a lot of couples, which is fantastic because with both of them having the same emotional framework and both of them having the same concepts and both of them having the same skills, then it means that their chances of successfully communicating are, up there in 95, 100%, rather than the normal 25%, which is hit or miss. So communication is key. And the other biggest issue that most people with chronic illness have is that we want people to understand, right? We want them to understand. It's not good enough that they have the concepts. We want them to understand how we feel. And the reality is they cannot understand how you feel because it is not happening to them. Okay, this is why we have a chronic illness community, because in general, the only people we can find who can truly understand how we feel are other people with chronic illness. And even then, not everyone with chronic illness has the same experience. So in many cases, you can find that, say, a friend or a relative might have your disease, but it does not impact their life in the same way. And because it doesn't impact their lives, they can't understand why you are having such a big issue with it, because it's really fairly trivial for them, right? So the only way you're going to find somebody who understands is to find someone who knows what it is that you are going through. So if you take the pressure off expecting your partner to understand and talk about the practical things. So forget understanding. What's important is the boundaries, right? What is important is that they understand the new boundaries and the changes that you have to make in order to maximize your best possible health and happiness. and try to get them to invest in that, because they are going to experience the direct benefits of that. So if you think of it this way, if you are miserable all the time, if you are constantly in pain, if you are constantly exhausted, if you are constantly depressed, anxious, traumatized, then everybody around you experiences the results of that, don't they? So your partner does, your children do, your family do, the people around work do. Everybody experiences the direct impact of how you feel, right? But when you set boundaries in place and when you decide that managing yourself and giving yourself the best possible chance to achieve your best health and happiness and quality of life, and you focus on you and you set those boundaries and you make yourself the most important person in the world, which is essential, it's something that needs to happen, everybody in your life gets the direct benefit of that, right? It's logical. It makes sense. If you feel better, everybody gets the benefit of that. If you feel bad, everybody gets the results from that, right? The experience of that. So looking after yourself creates a win-win scenario for everybody in your life, because when you start feeling better, everybody around you is going to get the benefits of that, which means you're all going to get along better, you're all going to feel better, and you're going to have better relationships. So it's really important to stop expecting them to understand. They're not going to understand. What's important is that you talk about, this is how it is, and this is what needs to happen now, and this is what we need to do, and I need your support in this. These changes are too big and these changes are too difficult for me to do this alone. And that's the important thing, that you want to be able to communicate with your partner to get their support. So you can look at this as an opportunity to grow closer, and it does happen. I have seen it happen many, many times. Couples have gone from almost estranged. I've seen couples in sexless marriages. I've seen couples in very difficult situations where they are both feeling like they're almost at the point where they're willing to throw in the towel, or they're contemplating divorce, because they don't have the skills, because chronic illness became overwhelming, because chronic illness became another thing that drove a wedge between them, and they didn't know how to deal with it, and they weren't together on the problem. So this can be an opportunity to either grow closer together or to grow further apart, right? And what you don't want to do, you don't want to keep your head in the sand and ignore it and hope it's going to go away, because that's not going to make it better. If there's problems in your relationship, then you've got to face it head on and you've got to be willing to deal with it. And that's going to mean being willing to make yourself vulnerable, all right? Being willing to go to your partner and say, I need your help. I need your support. I want to do something to help myself, and I can't do it alone. I need your support. You've got to invite them to be part of the problem and finding the solution to the problem. You've got to be able to communicate to be able to get them on side, rather than try and do it yourself and make yourself a martyr by saying, I don't want my partner to be affected. I don't want my children to be affected. They're going to be affected anyway. That's the truth. You can't protect them from it. It's changed you, and they're going to see that every day. So you can't protect them from it. By you investing in you, by you looking after you, by you getting some skills, by you getting some support, by you making some changes, by you accepting the illness, by saying this is something that's happened to me that has impacted us, and we need to deal with this as a couple, as a family. That is the reality. And if you turned it around and this was happening to your partner, I pretty much guarantee you that you would be wanting to do everything in your power to help them feel better, to help them be as healthy, to maximize their potential with the illness as much as you possibly can. because you love them and you want to be as happy together as you possibly can, like any other big challenge that comes along in life. Nobody can guarantee that we're going to be untouched by tragedy or illness or sickness or disability or financial ruin. Nobody can guarantee that. So we either pull together or we pull apart. That's what's going on. So how do you get your partner's support? One, you start by accepting the illness, right? This is the biggest stumbling block that I see everybody make. They want to bury their heads in the sand. You want to stay in denial. You say things to yourself like, I'm going to beat this. I'm not going to allow illness into my life. I'm not going to give it any power over me. That's just a form of denial, right? It's another form of denial. Now, accepting the illness doesn't mean you're giving up. It's imminently practical. Like, it's here. It's here, right? You can keep telling yourself that it's not, or you're not going to face it, or you're not going to, let it in. That's ridiculous. It's here. It's here. That's just denial, right? And a lot of people don't want to accept it because they're scared that that means they're going to give up and then they're going to roll over and they'll just go so far down they'll never get up. But I'm going to ask you a question now, and I want you to think about this very carefully when you're considering this whole thing about facing the illness, facing your grief, accepting it, knowing yourself as you do, and all the things in your life you have already overcome. And without even knowing you, I know there's a lot of things you've already overcome. Can you honestly see yourself rolling over and laying down and never getting up from this? Right? Can you honestly see that happening? Because I can't. I can't. You've already overcome so many things. This is just a fear. It is a pure and simple, scary story that we tell ourselves because we're resisting facing the truth and all of the changes that that is going to bring. Your grief will pass. I promise you, it will pass. And then you will pick yourself up and you'll dust yourself off and you'll start getting on with things because that's what you do. All right. So that's the first thing you've got to do. Second, you've got to let your partner in, right? Stop trying to protect them from your feelings. Stop trying to protect them from, I don't know, out of guilt or out of feeling like you're a burden, right? Start talking to them about how you feel. Give yourself permission to be vulnerable. Give yourself permission to seek their comfort, right? Give yourself permission to cry with them, right? Allow them to support you. Tell them what is going on with you and invite them to help you to find the strength or help you to find the solutions or, find a way to face this together. Stop thinking that you are going to bring them down or you're going to burden them because that's another story that's only going to create distance between you. Stop expecting them to understand. They're not going to understand, all right? What's important is that you talk to them about the things that need to change and the boundaries that you need to set and why that needs to happen. Now, of course, they're going to be frustrated. Of course, you get frustrated. They're going to be frustrated. Don't take that personally. This is a big change. And often we are very far ahead of our partners when it comes to accepting that this is going on because we're experiencing it, right? It's very real. It's reality for us. For them, it's a concept. And that's how it's going to be. And see it as an opportunity to grow closer, right? To fix any issues that were there before. And if you're struggling, don't try and do it alone. Like, go and get some counseling, go and get some marriage therapy. You're always willing to, have a discovery session with me, the two of you, and that's completely free, 25 minutes. We'll talk about it. See if you feel like I'm the right person to help you move through this experience and start pulling together and start helping each other and start understanding how to communicate with each other. And if you do these things, providing there are no major issues in your relationship, like addiction, or violence, or spousal abuse, or narcissism, or things like that. I mean, in any relationship, both partners have to be willing to make it work. You can't keep a relationship going on your own. And I think what can often happen too is when you realize that perhaps the issues in your relationship are beyond fixing, then the prospect of facing life on your own with chronic illness can be even harder, right? Can be even more difficult. And that's something you're going to have to weigh up. I mean, it is my belief that you have a much better chance of building personal happiness when you're out of a difficult relationship than when you're in it. But people stay together for a number of reasons, and that have nothing to do with love and, you know, whatever works for you as a couple. If that what works, then that's what you do. So I hope this has been useful for you. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. So I'll just take a few minutes, and if you want to ask any questions, please feel free to ask them. Okay, well, it looks like there's not any questions. So if you're watching this on the replay or you're watching this on YouTube, then please feel free to make any comments or ask any questions, and I'll be happy to do my best to answer them. Now, I also want to reiterate, like I said, how to communicate with your partner. You've got to get straight first with what's going on, all right? So you've got to accept what's going on. So you've got to get very clear about where you stand with the chronic illness. You've got to get in the right mindset. You've got to get out of the guilt. You've got to get out of feeling like a burden. You've got to get out of feeling any shame, any anxiety, any denial. So if you want to find out the emotional processes of what you're going through, and this isn't going to cost you anything but an email address, you can head over to my website at emotionalautoimmunity.com, sign up to be on my VIP email list, and that will give you, as my thank you gift, you will get my free Moving Through the Grief of Chronic Illness ebook, right? That has got all of the 9 phases of all the different emotional stages that go along with becoming chronically ill. So work on yourself first before you think about working on your relationship, because you've got to get clear first, because otherwise you are going to still be in denial. You are going to still feel like a burden. You will still be tiptoeing around each other. You will be isolating yourself. You won't know what to do or say. So when you get really clear on this, it is going to help you. You can also give the ebook to your partner to read and just say something like, look, I know what I'm going through. You're really confused. I'm really confused. It's this huge thing. It's changed my life. I can't adequately explain it to you. But if you read this, this will help you understand a bit about what I'm going through and how life-changing it is. And then we can talk about it, right? It's going to give you a frame of reference, a mutual frame of reference that you can talk about together, so that your partner will be able to start to understand just a little bit where you're coming from. And they're not really going to get it, but it's going to give them that frame of reference that is so important, that they can understand why this invisible chronic illness has had such a massive and profound physical and emotional impact on you. So that's one thing that you can do. So I hope this has been useful for you. Kimberly said, thank you, Kerry. I will share this with my husband. You're so welcome, Kimberly. I hope it works. I hope it helps the two of you be able to start to talk about this and sort of clear the air and start to be able to understand this new thing that's happened to both of you and find a way to move forward. So thanks everybody for watching. Thanks for listening. Remember, you can all book your free 25-minute discovery session with me online. No obligation, just a chance to meet me and find out more about what I do. And at the end of that discovery session, I will not be asking you for an answer on the spot. I don't do that. I'll invite you to go away and think about it for a week. I'll email you all the information. And if you want to work with me, all you have to do is email back and say, yes, I'd like to get started. And if you don't even need to respond. All right, I'll just keep my notes for a week and then I'll just shred them. Elaine said, thank you, Kerry. I will sign up. I'm single, but this involves family and friends for me. You're so welcome, Elaine. Yes, and the same processes are true as for partners, as for family and friends. You know, having that communication is really important, knowing how to talk about the illness, knowing how to set the boundaries, not feeling like you're burdening them, not feeling guilty that you're making their life harder. You know, if it happens to you, it happens to everybody you love, right? Because you've changed, then it changes your relationship with everybody you love. And if you have the right skills and you know how to talk about it, it actually does become easier. And in many, many ways, your relationships can get better. So all of these skills are transferable to every relationship in your life. And that's what I say to all of my clients. You know, when you get these skills, then you get them for life, and they're going to benefit every relationship that you have, from the people you work with to the people you love. So thank you, guys. I'll be back next week with another topic for you. I really want to tackle the most important emotional issues for you. So I'll be back at the same time. So remember, pop it in your diary, and I look forward to seeing you next week. So bye for now.